There's a huge shift happening in Singapore's corporate world. I mean, the way companies talk about their climate impact is about to get a complete makeover. So let's break down what this new era of climate reporting is really all about. At its core, this whole story is really about two major players coming together. On one hand, you've got these new global sustainability standards from the IFRS Foundation. And on the other, you have Singapore, stepping up to the plate and adopting them. It's setting a whole new bar for transparency in the region. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of what this means for companies in Singapore, we've got to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. This isn't just a local thing, not at all. It's part of a massive worldwide movement. And right at the heart of this movement are what we call the ISSB standards. The easiest way to think about them is like a universal language for sustainability. The whole point is to create one solid set of rules so investors can actually compare companies' climate risks apples to apples, no matter where they are in the world. Okay, so with this new global standard coming, the million-dollar question is, who in Singapore really needs to sit up and pay attention? Let's get into exactly which companies are going to be affected by this. The two main bodies steering the ship here are ACRA, which is the watchdog for all companies, and SGX RegCo, which focuses specifically on companies listed on the stock exchange. They're the ones who've put together the roadmap for how this is all going to happen. And that roadmap zeroes in on two main groups. First, you've got your listed issuers. That's pretty simple, right? If your company is on the Singapore exchange, this is for you. But the second group is what they're calling large non-listed companies, basically the big privately owned giants. So what exactly counts as large? Well, there are two key numbers you've got to hit. The first one is about revenue. We're talking at least 1 billion Singapore dollars every year. And on top of that, the second number is about total assets. The company has to have at least $500 million in assets. It's not one or the other. You have to meet both thresholds to fall into this category. All right, now for the part you've probably been waiting for. When does this all actually kick in? And I'll tell you right now, this is not a flip the switch kind of change. It's a really careful, phased rollout that's going to happen over the next several years. But before we get to the dates, we need a super quick crash course on three terms you'll hear a lot: Scope 1, 2, and 3. Scope 1 emissions are direct. Think smoke from a factory you own. Scope 2 is indirect. It's from the electricity you buy. And Scope 3, well, that's the big one. It's basically everything else in your entire value chain, from suppliers to customers. Okay, let's walk through this roadmap. It all starts in 2025. That's when all listed companies need to report their Scope 1 and 2 emissions. A year later, in 2026, the really big listed companies are expected to add that complex Scope 3 data. Now, 2027 is a huge year. The large private companies have to jump in with their Scope 1 and 2 reporting, and at the same time, listed companies have to start getting their reports checked by an external party. Then we jump to 2029, when that external check becomes required for the private companies too. So you see, it's a gradual ramp up, step by step. Now, you might think Singapore is just taking the global rulebook and hitting copy-paste, but that's not quite right. They're actually making a few specific tweaks to make it fit just right for the local scene. There are two key differences to know about. First, timing. The global standard says sustainability reports come out with the financial statements. Singapore's saying you can have an extra month, but only if you get your report externally checked. Second, Scope 3 emissions. The global standard requires them, but Singapore is easing into it, starting with the big listed companies first. So why that extra month? It's actually a pretty clever incentive. The regulators know that getting your report verified by a third party is a big deal. So, by offering a little more time as a reward, they're kind of dangling a carrot, gently pushing companies to a higher standard of reporting. It's a strategic move. Okay, so let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture here. The rules also have a really smart way of dealing with the fact that business today is so global, with parent companies and subsidiaries all over the world. This brings us to a super practical rule called the parent company exemption. A large private company in Singapore can actually get a pass on filing its own report, but only if three things are true. 1, its activities are already covered in its parent company's report. 2, the parent uses the same high-quality standards. And 3, that parent company's report is public for everyone to see. And the logic here is just, well, it's just common sense. It's all about avoiding doing the same work twice. I mean, if the global parent company's already doing comprehensive reporting that covers its Singapore business, why make the local guys reinvent the wheel? It's all about being efficient. So there you have it. Singapore is embarking on this multi-year journey to a whole new level of transparency. And this all leaves us with one massive question to chew on. As this kind of detailed reporting becomes the new normal, how is it going to fundamentally change the face of business? Not just how people invest, but corporate strategy, and maybe even the very definition of what makes a successful company, not just in Singapore, but all over the world.